right, he's the coach of one of the best teams in the country. He's in our studio after this SportsCenter now. All right, we are Mike and Mike, and it's our thrill here as a lot of the big college football coaches have come through ESPN in the last week or so. His team has won at least 10 games in 6 of his 7 seasons at Florida State and figures to be right there again. This year, Jimbo Fisher is in our studio. It's great to see you, Coach. How have you been?
Great to see you, Mike and Mike.
I guess first I would ask, we showed the video, and those that didn't see it, the hot thing now is these guys just going to different people's driveways and slam dunking on their hoops. I don't want to assume then say you can't dunk. I can't dunk anymore. But if you could like that, would you go do that? I think
Heck yes, I would. I would do
it.
I think it's something really neat. My son was telling me about it the other day, and I'd never heard of it. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm filming this guy dunking." There was a guy in our own
He was filming him.
He was going around dunking. I said, "Well, you're not doing the dunking." He said, "No."
It's a shame that you can't dunk. It's so much fun for guys like us who can. I mean, I go around and I just throw them down.
Yeah, except you have to keep going to look for the Nerf hoop.
Off the backboard and all that kind of stuff. Jimbo is here. Okay, so I'm fascinated by this dynamic. So we have the new college football playoff system in place.
Yep.
And I know a lot of this scheduling predates that, but you're opening with Alabama, which is a monster game, and it's fabulous for us, the fans, and it's particularly interesting because you used to work on Nick Saban's staff. But even putting that aside for the moment, take us through the thinking of that kind of scheduling now, because someone like me might look at it and say, listen, you're going to play in a really rough conference in the ACC. You yourself have said it, maybe the best football conference in America right now. You know, stockpile wins wherever you can find them. You'll win enough games in the conference. Take us through the thinking on a monster early season schedule game like that.
Well, you know, I think one of the things that you get out of that game, you're talking about the football playoff, the big bowl games. Well, the only way you can create that environment for those guys is a neutral site game. And it gets them in the environment of going, I'm not at home, I'm not in their turf, we're at a neutral site, the fans are 50-50, it's a different city, the atmosphere, the chaos, as they say, you know, the clutter, all the things that you have to eliminate. When you go play those playoff games, those major bowl games, which we've been in over the last 5 years, you have to create that environment. So creating that environment again, and then in the beginning, when this game was, they were trying to get Nick and I, we started having success, and we're the 2 winningest teams in the country over the last 7 years. So they've been after us, so we finally worked it out. But at that time, we were bringing Florida State back on the map. We were trying to bring them up. And when we scheduled that game, I think it was back in 12, if I'm not mistaken, when we scheduled it, somewhere around there, 12 or 13. But both teams getting up, all right, you know, it's a great brand, it's a branding game to me. When you get 2 great programs, you get to go out there and you go head-to-head recruiting. You know, Atlanta's a big area for us to all recruit. You know, that whole dynamic and creating that atmosphere, I think, is very important for these kids to get used to being that in that.
And while you want every year to start the same, you love the enthusiasm, the start of a new year, the whole thing. It's just, or I should say, how different do you think this will be? I know the coaches aren't part of the summer workouts, but certainly you can get reports from the strength coach on just how it can be. And then you're getting ready to start camp. Do you expect it to be emotionally different? Because let's be honest, some teams start out with smaller schools too. They use those as kind of, you know, easing their way into the season. Obviously, this isn't that. So do you expect a big difference in the mental side and the emotion of the players?
It definitely gets your attention in the offseason. You know you can't come in playing, well, I'm going to play myself. You know, you hear guys, I'm going to play myself into shape. I'm going to do this like in pro camp and things like that. No, you're going to have to be your best right off the bat. And we played Ole Miss a year ago, who at that time was preseason 11. Right. We played Oklahoma State a couple years ago in Jerry's World out there, which was a big atmosphere and environment. So we're used to that, but now Alabama, of course, has been as good as anybody in America over the since Nick's been there, last 10 years. I mean, that's the premier team right now. But it definitely gets your attention. But the thing you said there, which I hope our guys don't, is the emotional. I think we do focus-wise, but I think emotionally, you can only get yourself peaked so often. You know what I'm saying? And at certain times, maybe we get into that game, but I think the focus and concentration of knowing that we have to do things right from the beginning and the urgency to do it, I think, really intensifies that way.
Mike and Mike, Jimbo Fisher is with us here giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. He's one of only 4 active coaches who've won the national championship in college football with Urban Meyer, Dabo Swinney, and, of course, Nick Saban, who, again, you worked for, and now you go head-to-head against. How is it different for you coaching against him?
I mean, we used to go at it in practice every day. I was on the offensive side of the ball, but it was great respect, and I think, you know, when you're a competitor, you want to measure yourself against guys who are highly competitive and highly successful. And of course, Nick has been as successful as anybody in college football. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I think the programs and the significance of the game for where we're trying to go. We're both trying to go to a national playoff and a national championship, season as we lead in. So, I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting. Nick's one, again, tremendous coach, tremendous, there's so many things about him that we all say, but he's a great organizer, as I say, he can intensify guys. He knows how to push the buttons of guys. He knows how to coach on offensive. Everybody says, he's an defensive guy. Well, he understands offense, trust me, and what he has to have to do it. But it was great learning under him. But now, we've went our own directions. It's going to be a highly competitive football game.
How about your team coming into this year? If in a position like you'll get great players all the time. You get guys that move on to the NFL, but because of the recruiting, you get depth, and the next cycle comes on through. So where are you now?
I think right now we've hit a really good cycle. I think last year we had a few seniors that were really dynamic, and of course Dalvin, who went out early, and Travis and Big Rod Johnson. But other than that, we've hit one of our most experienced teams. I mean, up front we'll have 4 of the 5 starters back. Two of the 3 wideouts right now had great years the second half of the year with Nooney Murray and Auden Tate. We're bringing in some other young guys coming in, some young backs that are talented. Jacquez has played well, and he got an experienced quarterback. Anytime you have an experienced quarterback, I think it's big. And defensively, we return almost everybody, and we get a guy named Derwin James back who I'll be real happy to watch play.
So talk about the quarterback with the greatest name, DeAndre Francois. I mean, it's one of the great names, forget just a quarterback, that we get to say out there. What in his development? What's the next step for him?
Everybody talks about his personal development, which he does. He's a film junkie. He understands and he studies the protections. He studies coverages, how to get the ball out, where my guys and my one-on-ones are going to be, and all that. But where I've really saw his growth is in his relationship to players. And I think once he's established his feet on the ground, okay, I can play. I'm a tough guy. They respect me. They'll follow me. But what he has done is learn to control his teammates and help them. In other words, the guy he has to get on in practice, the guy he has to walk in the private and pat on the tail, the guy he has to talk to away from there. And learning how to get guys, like I tell him, it doesn't matter how much talent you have as a quarterback. Well, those guys lay down and play for you. And I think they've respected him that way. But now they see him in a different, we got to take this. We're going from 10 wins to 13 wins or 14 wins or 15 wins. And, really getting guys to understand his mentality as a competitor. And people don't talk about that as much as a quarterback. We all talk about what they can do physically and all that. But, I mean, that was the relationships and the trust he has and the ability in the offseason. Hey, let's go take a half hour right here and work on these 2 routes. You see so much of that right now. And I think that's where his real growth is coming in.
Mike and Mike, Jimbo Fisher is here, head coach Florida State. Again, they open with what should be a fantastic game against Alabama at the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I'm always fascinated by the dynamic of the way, the world is changing, and football is such a regimented place. It is maybe the one place left in sports anyway where it feels like the coach says something and the players just do it, and there, in almost every other place I feel like there's a lot of questioning of that. Have you found that changing? The young people are so different than they were 10, 15, certainly, Mike, when you were growing up as a football player. How different is it now?
It is definitely different, and when I think social media has been a big part of that, because I think, and there's so many different people in their ears, so many different things, and I think the influx of the game, how the TV, the coverage, and from high school. I mean, we're on these guys from 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and then they're going to camps and openings, and everybody knows them, and they're told they're going to be this and that, and now they're a commodity. They're not going to, they're going to get a great education, but also I got a chance to play ball. You know what I'm saying? And in 3 years I can be in the league. How you develop me. I think it's very important to have open lines of communication. I think if you openly talk to those folks, and the players and their families and the people involved, their coaches, and explain to what's going on, what's going to happen. Don't keep them in the dark and just say, like my dad used to say, why? Because I said so.
Listen.
Now, there's times you want to do that.
No, I'm with you. I agree, but you'd like that every now and then to just do it because I said so.
They don't listen. They don't want to hear that, right? They don't want to hear it.
They do if they trust you. There's times you can say, listen, I ain't got time. Just please do it. I'll explain it later.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If there's a trust factor, and I think the open lines of communication and being honest with them and tell them, and then afterwards, why? Now, some days I'll get on a kid and we'll ride him hard in practice, and then he'll be hit, and I'll put my arm around him as I'm walking off, and this is why I did this. I think if you explain to kids now why, and they understand that you have their best interest at heart, when you do have those moments, you say, because I said so, yes, sir. And that comes from the word trust.
I think they also learn to question during practice because they get an extra 20-second break if they keep asking why. Players, obviously in college, they rotate through every 3, 4, 5 years. So, and I remember when I was at Notre Dame, there wasn't the summer school, but you get that antsiness when camp is getting ready to go. Like in the NFL, it was like a couple weeks before camp, my wife wanted me out of the house and such. But you've been constant through all this, through all the changes, been doing this a long time. How is it for you? When do you kind of get that I'm going to camp feeling, and it really starts to churn
As soon as you
inside.
get back off vacation, after those first week or so of July, I mean, you get that little break with your family. You got to go have it, and you finish up your camps, and you're dying to get on the vacation, and then you get there, and then you're about halfway into it, and all of a sudden your mind just starts clicking. I mean, it does. You hate to take it away. And as soon as you get back, because how quickly that thing gets up on you, and you got to be prepared and have a plan. And I think the organization part of it is really critical. So when you get back, you know exactly where you're going to go, and letting your players know what they got to do.
You're coaching in a big-time conference, obviously, in the ACC. I got Urban Meyer yesterday saying the Big Ten is the best college football conference. I got people in the SEC, probably led by Paul Feinbaum, screaming and yelling, no, we're still the best conference. What is with this competitiveness over which is the best conference?
Well, I do. Here's what I do think. I think it's all starting to really level out. I think the players are going everywhere, the things. And you look at the history. And why I said about the ACC, because we had said, for years it was the SEC, it was the Big Ten, and ACC was thought of as a basketball league, which it is. I think the finest basketball league. But why can't we be the finest football league? And I think you look in the last 5 years, from 2 Heisman Trophy winners, 2 national champions, 3 teams have been in it. And we've had 3 of the last 4 we've been in it. The number of coaches, the influx of coaches in the ACC, destination jobs are now becoming the players. I think in the results we've had in playoff games and major bowl games. I think we're 8-3 in the last 5 years in playoff games, national championship games, and major 6 games, and then head-to-head meetings. We've done that. So, I mean, I think, listen, they're all great conferences, but I think we're just as good, and I think our division, in my opinion, is as good as there is in college football.
And obviously the lifeblood of college football is the recruits and the players coming through. How, from when you first started going into a kid's living room and trying to sell your program, how much has that changed? What's the biggest changes you've seen in doing
what
it now?
you just said, going in. See, I get to go in December and January when you're a senior. Most of those decisions are already made.
Right.
Back in the day, you never even knew.
That's right.
I mean, going in now it's when they're coming early, when they're coming to your camp, when they're coming on the unofficial visit, when do they come on the official visit. You can count on one hand or less the amount of times you're actually going into a guy's living room in December and January, and that decision's being made. It's being made year-round now because of social media and travel and our world becoming such a global world that people can go all the different places. That's what you just said is the biggest change in the world.
How early would you offer a guy? I mean,
very few. I mean, there's a few guys. For instance, we offered Derwin as a freshman, but he was physically mature and ready. Right. And there's very few guys that you'll do, but there's 2 or 3 or 5, 2 maybe 5 guys a year you'll offer in that class that you see the size, you see the potential, you know their mindset, you've been around them enough. That's the big thing, being around them. But it's usually in that freshman year or so.
Jimbo, it's great to have you here. Does this guy look familiar to you at all? You reckon Ryan Clark is here.
Hey, he remembers those battles every day we used to have in practice now.
How
you doing, bud?
Look at that.
Hey, this guy was a heck of a player now. We used to
Yeah, you keep telling us that.
Bringing guys together. Yeah, Ryan talks. Go ahead.
He was
Jump on that
LSU.
mic.
We were
Yeah.
here now.
Go ahead. Give him a microphone. Go ahead.
Jimbo came around and started some new stuff at LSU. We stunk it up before Nick and Jimbo got there. So obviously, these guys owe a lot to them because had we continued stinking, I probably would be working somewhere else. I'd probably be at Tiger Athletic Foundation or something like that.
They take good care of it. This guy was a heck of a player.
Jimbo, thanks a million. Great to see you.
Great to be with you.
Great to see you with us here as well.
Appreciate it.
Quick break on Mike and Mike. Back in a moment after this word from TaylorMade. I've been telling you all summer long, I have made a new change in golf balls. You know that I'm very particular about golf equipment.
And with that, we welcome you to a fresh new hour of SportsCenter. Jay Harris, Kevin Nagandi. We have Brian Windhorst on the Cavaliers saga in about 10 minutes. But until then,
the countdown is on. 39 days away. Alabama, Florida State, and Tallahassee, they're ready to go. The expectations always sky high.
Expectations certainly looming large in Tallahassee.
They're the favorite to win the ACC this year.
The number 4 overall class of 2017.
We won national championships in the last 7 years. We're the second winningest program in the country. We won championships across the board, and we got a national brand name.
He wants to get back and vie for championship.
Potentially getting back to the college football playoff.
And the future's great, I promise you that.
Mentioned those high expectations. He set the bar quite high. That is Bobby Bowden. They continue with Jimbo Fisher. He's come to fill the legendary shoes when he took over in 2010, and he's compiled a higher winning percentage in the ACC than Bobby did back then, the highest in conference history, in fact. This year's Noles, they returned 15 primary starters from a year ago, and they add a trio of #1 recruits at their respective positions. The names you will hear down the road: defensive tackle Marvin Wilson, defensive end Joshua Kando and running back Cam Akers, all in their top 13 nationally and number one at their position in the class of 2017. That is the future coming in, and the future right now has Jimbo Fisher in our studio. Good to have the Florida State head coach with us here. And when you talk about the expectations and the talent that surrounds, you also have to be aware of how do you keep them all focused. And during spring practice, you said you made practice hell for your players. What does that mean?
I think in today's time, because I think creating a toughness and a competitiveness in practice, I think in the way we do things today in our society, it's not like it was 15, 20 years ago. And I think you got to create that competitiveness and that toughness and understand that football still is a game that's physical. You have to be played right, played clean. But we tried to really emphasize the physicality of the game and the competitiveness of the game.
You also had your players wear different colored jerseys that show their effort that they had that day. Garnet jerseys for those who showed championship effort, white for average effort, orange for those who weren't showing effort. Was that more of a Clemson orange or a Miami orange?
Yeah, Clemson, Miami, and Florida. Orange is not good in Tallahassee. Orange is not good in Tallahassee.
All right, don't wear that. What was the thought process behind that?
Well, I think also, you know, guys say, well, I think it's not important what the coaches think. It's important what your players think. And I think, and where you stand in the status of those guys and saying, this is not acceptable what we're doing. It wasn't to embarrass. It was to educate. You know what I'm saying? And we would sit down and say, this is why you're in it. This is why you're in this. This is why you're in this. And then show those guys those films that we filmed them in practice of giving those efforts and what we thought of them. You know what I'm saying? And I think education for kids, once they see it on film, it's amazing how quickly they pick it up.
What was their reaction? Because before you said, you know, it was different than from 25 years ago, and kids these days are a little different. So what was their reaction to your approach?
First of all, it was, man, why you? And then they said, no. I said, no. You can take this as I'm trying to embarrass you, or I'm trying to make you the player that you can be. And this is what it takes to get there. And I think once they understood that, and then the other players on the team, I mean, they embraced that. Because I'm going to tell you, we as coaches can talk and coach all we want. Till your players take ownership of themselves and of the other guys on the team, you're never going to be a great organization or a great team. And that's what we were trying to present to those guys. And once they got that, and then the other players start saying, listen, they weren't making fun. Listen, let's do this to get you here. Let's do this to get you here. And bringing them along, it turned out very good.
So the first day you introduced this jersey color, right? Do you notice there's a lot of orange? And then the last day, did you notice any orange?
No, there was. In the second half of spring, there was no orange. And the first half, there wasn't as much as you'd think, but there was some. And, you know, some refused. I'm not putting that on. Yes, you are. You earned it. You earned it. But at the same time, we explained why it got better. But there was none in the second half. They got it. They didn't want to be in orange.
That's a good thing.
They didn't want to be in white. That was more important, too. They didn't want to be neither one of them.
There you go.
Yeah.
You opened up against Alabama September 2nd on ABC. Usually you have 6 days or potentially a few weeks to get ready for a team like this. What's it been like to have 8 months to get ready for a Nick Saban-led team?
Sometimes you got to be careful not to overanalyze and overdo. And you got to remember, that's still a different football team. They're still different guys. And that's one thing that makes openers so unique. You don't know the changes in coaches, players, the new influx of what may be emphasized or what may not be emphasized. Openers are, as great as they are for the fans and everybody else, man, they drive a coach crazy. I mean, it's endless because you end up chasing your tail, as I say sometimes. And you got to worry about, the big thing, worry about yourself. Get yourself right before you can even worry about your opponent. Then we'll game plan the opponent. And we've looked at film, and we have a preliminary plan, and we've looked at things that we know we want to do in camp, and we did in spring, just like they did. I know exactly what they do. So from that standpoint, but more importantly, you got to understand yourself and your team, because teams, no matter what, how many guys you got back, team has a 1-year life expectancy. They change every year, and they each got to develop their own personality and identity. And you know, we're busy doing that with ours.
You mentioned you know what the opponent's going to do because you have a history, of course, with Nick Saban. You go back to your LSU days with him and understanding what he's doing and the thought process. Our guy, Marcus Spears, told us that you guys would go back and forth, too. Share the story that stands out with you and Nick going back, engaging back and forth during your LSU days.
There was a bunch of it. It was very competitive, but it was also, I understood as an assistant, I never wanted to, head coach, as a head coach, you got to have a plan, and things are done well, and you got to understand that. And we had a great relationship. That's one of the things I did learn from him. It was tremendous. But we had great players, man. We developed that thing from, you know, we weren't very good when we got there. And then we won an SEC title. Then we won a national title. And had a lot of guys draft Marcus. I recruited Marcus. I was one who put him and Michael Clayton and those guys, that whole crew of guys that came in that class. It was a special class. Andrew Whitworth, they're still playing. Some of those guys are still playing. It was amazing. But I remember one day, we were in an inside drill like the first or second day. and they brought some double A-gap blitz. We're trying to line up in the base things, and he hits us, and he bumped me. Hey, like that, boy. Man, I was on our side. You know what I mean? I'm trying on that side. So I'm sitting there thinking the whole practice, I got to get him one time, you know.
Yeah.
So and like Marcus said, we'll pull out the old stick and draw something in the dirt one time for him that just they ain't lined up in right before. They did it at the end of practice. We wouldn't do it at the beginning of practice because you have to listen to it the whole practice.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had to create a big play on him and let you know, hey, we can come back on the other side.
Did you do it?
Oh,
Did you
yeah,
get him?
we would do that occasionally.
And then what was
at
his
the same
reaction?
just roll over and jump on you. And I understand, yes, sir. It was right, but you had to get your pride back. But I'm going to tell you, but a tremendous organizer, tremendous coach, and those were fun days. And those play, I just saw Ryan Clark just a minute ago. Ryan was a free safety on our first two teams there. He and that teams that we won that first SEC title in 2001. Great memories and great game we had against Tennessee that year. But just it was great to see, and we were laughing about all those times. But just how competitive. But, you know, it was fun. And nobody had agendas except we were going to win and try to be good.
You mentioned each team has a year shelf life. You try to get each team's identity. Whose shoes would be more difficult to fill for this particular team?
You know, I don't know if it's shoes you got to fill, or you have to find what you're going to do and how you're going to create plays or stop plays or be the cover guy in your own regard. But, you know, of course, Dalvin's going to be tremendous. I mean, you know, you create so many big plays, so many things he did. But DeMarcus Walker, I mean, on defense and the leadership and all the things that go on in that way. I mean, but there's so many. But they're always like that at Florida State. Yeah. Like I said, whoever was going to replace Deion, who was going to replace Terrell Buckley, who was going to replace Leroy Butler, Lawrence Dawsey, Charlie Ward, Warwick Dunn. I mean, you get Peter Warwick. I mean, but, you know, that's one of the great things about being at Florida State. What those guys do, they say, well, their records are broken, they're better. Well, no, they set a standard, and then people shoot for it. And eventually they're going to be broken. And that's the great thing about Florida State. We've got such great history, such great players, and they set that bar so high. You know, the Jameis Winstons of the world, the Charlie Wards of the world, all those guys. And then the next guy can push up, but he would have never gotten there if those guys hadn't have been there. And so I think the interesting thing for me, it's not whose shoes to fill, it's who's competitive enough to go try and fill them. That's going to be very interesting.
And that gets us to your quarterback, because Dalvin Cook, of course, Travis Rudolph, those weapons are gone, that experience there. You have the talent, it's just not the experience there on the outside. What are your expectations for DeAndre Francois?
I think very good. And the thing outside, I think the emergence of Nooney and Auden Tate the last half of the year, you know, created so many big plays for us. So we feel very comfortable with some young, talented guys with Keith Gavin and some other guys coming in that regard, great tight end in Izzo. And we still got 4 of the 5 linemen back. But what I've watched him grow at, which is so fun to me, quarterbacking is what's done behind the scenes off the field. You know what I'm saying? There's so much of that in leadership and team chemistry. And, you know, let's go out here in the summer and let's work for another hour and a half on these 3 routes. Hey, guys, come on. I got to work with the backs. I got to work with the tight ends, the linemen, our snaps. We got to get shotgun snaps, whatever they do. But also, which teammate, all right, he's got to walk over on the side after one of us coaches has gotten on him, pat him on the butt and say, hey, he did me the same way. Just do this, this, and this. Or sometimes he's got to get on a guy. Or he's got to meet with him off the field and do those things. And I think that's where he's really grown in his chemistry of the team and the ownership that I talked about, of taking ownership of the team and our players, because Derwin and those guys do it we got quite a few guys are doing it on defense, some guys on offense are doing it, but I see his growth in that regard. And to me, quarterbacking is so much, it's getting those other players on the field that they'll die for you. These guys, he's our commander-in-chief. We're going to make sure he's protected. We're going to run. We're going to do that ball, we're going to catch it for him. We're going to break that extra run. And I think he earned that respect last year by how he played, the toughness he played with, the competitiveness. And now I think he sees him, they're seeing him a different way, and he's understanding how to get them to understand how he thinks now.
Going to need that leadership and experience as you guys open September 2nd in Atlanta against Alabama on ABC. Jimbo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're watching First Take, presented by Buy.
We've got Jimbo Fisher in studio, and, you know, he loves to talk. So we're going to talk to him in just a second. But before we get to that, our next WNBA game of the week has the Liberty taking on the Lynx. That's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN 2.
42 ticks left in regulation time. Francois to throw for the end zone. It is caught. Touchdown. Daquan Murray. Knocked up in the air and intercepted. And that should seal the deal for Florida State. Celebration underway in the state of Florida for Florida State.
And what a year for Jimbo Fisher. Clearly one of the top coaches in all of college football.
After legendary coach Bobby Bowden stepped down after 34 years in Tallahassee, our next guest was asked to take over one of the most storied programs in college football. And all he's done in 7 seasons is win 78 games, including a 29-game win streak over 3 seasons. And, of course, that national championship. Can't forget about that. Florida State head coach Jimbo Fisher here in the First Take studios. We're so happy to have you. Obviously, your team has incredible expectations this year, top few rankings, and you've got that big game against Alabama to open up the season. What is the pressure like to know that right out of the gate, all the attention is on you?
You know, you live in pressure all the time, and Florida State, our goal is a national championship every year. So pressure becomes, the internal pressure is greater than the external pressure. And it always is. No matter what everybody's else expectations are, our internal expectations are greater. So this is what we live with daily, and we're looking forward to it. But it brings a sense of urgency to your players in summer camp, summer practice. You know, they know they have to be great because then after that, 2 weeks later, we're playing Miami. Then we played NC State. And then so our schedule right off the bat, not just with Alabama, it's going to be, that first month is going to be really tough.
Well, you know, Coach, I was with you at LSU.
Yes.
You and Coach Saban. And you know how I feel about the SEC. At media days, though, Coach, you said that the ACC was actually the best conference in the country. What makes you feel that you guys have now surpassed the SEC as the best conference in the country?
And like I said, I coached that league. It's a tremendous league. But I think right now, just in the last 4 to 5 years, you go through 2 national championships. We've played for 3 of the 4. 2 Heisman winners. The head-to-head matchups, which we've been successful. And I'm going to tell you, quarterbacks. In any league, you know this, in the pro football, you look, I mean, you think about this year. You had Lamar Jackson, who won the Heisman. Deshaun Watson, phenomenal, one of the greatest college players. They weren't even the highest quarterback drafted in our league.
Right.
Trubinsky went in the 2nd pick. So, I mean, and then you go to our young guy. You had Kai. You got a young guy. You had the guy at Virginia Tech and NC State. I think quarterbacks, and then the influx of coaches. I mean, the influx of coaches right now coming into our league with Mark Richt and Bobby Petrino and, of course, Dabo, all the guys that are in that league. And now those guys, and the investment the ACC is putting in because of they're becoming destination jobs. Those guys aren't leaving those jobs. And they're understanding and they're putting money into it. And right now, like I say, all those leagues are great, but I think we can play with any of them.
So this is like a reunion. I feel like
It is, exactly. Every
morning
day.
It's been like,
It was a resurrection down there, man. That was it.
You want to just tell old stories?
Well, you know,
tell me something about Ryan. That's what I want to know.
We did.
I mean? Like, we were a bad team. And then in steps Jimbo and Coach Saban, and Saban basically told us we were a bad team, but we were just talking about when we beat Tennessee in the SEC championship.
In 2001.
That really started the whole thing of winning down there at LSU. And so that's why it's good to see my guy.
It was.
Did Ryan ever get in your face and yell at you about the play calling? Because yesterday, this is what Ryan tells me. He's seen players, we're talking about Richard Sherman, yelling at Seattle's offensive coordinator. He said, I've seen it all. I've seen defensive players yell at defensive coordinators, and you said, I've seen defensive coordinators yell at offensive coordinators. So this is what I want to know. Did this guy ever get in your face?
Never.
No, never. We were slinging it all over the place. We were running it.
Hey, we were doing the right thing on offense.
We had good. We had Josh Reed and Toefield and Rohan and the boys and Robert Roll and the whole group, man. We had Michael. That's when Michael was a freshman that year. We had a great team, man.
Looking at your team, obviously, I think Derwin James is probably the best all-around football player in the country. And I watched your quarterback last year take beatings, stand in the pocket, stand down the barrel, make huge throws. What do you think the ceiling is for you guys? Are you guys setting out, is your word to him, is your message, we're going to win the national championship?
Yes, and like I asked him this, is it possible we can win? And they say yes. And I asked him, is it probable? We got to make possible probable. And I feel we can because of the experience we have on defense, the expectations we have as far as those guys' expectations. As you know this, till the players take ownership, I can have all of them in the world. I can tell them everything in the world. What are your expectations? And I ask them, what are you guys taking ownership of it? And then the leadership and the experience we have back on offense, and DeAndre on offense. Now, when you got a quarterback that'll stand there and take bullets like that, and on defense, you want to, hey, I want to get this guy the ball and make him, look what he's doing for us. And when your quarterback's tough, your team is tough, and I think he's done that. And now he's starting to put his personality on them. You know, the guy he goes and pats on the butt in practice when I'm chewing him out, or the guy he grabs after practice, hey, let's go do this route 3 more times. You're starting to see all those little things, the psychological edges of quarterbacking, because we all talk about the physical things, but to me, quarterbacking it's not just, he's got to have that whole team willing to know, if I can get that guy the ball, we're going to win.
And you're starting to see that, you're saying?
In my opinion, we are. And how we practice and how he goes about his business, and our team sees it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Derwin and those guys on defense are making sure they're going to get it back.
So let's go back for a minute. So you've got Alabama first game. You and Coach Saban go back to the same days here with Ryan. But it's been a little while since,
it has been.
Since
We've
you
all
guys have
changed.
coached. That's what my question is for you. How familiar do you feel with Coach Saban? How much has changed? Do you feel like you can lean back on experiences and tendencies and habits that you encountered when you guys coached together, or is this just starting from scratch? This is a different ball game.
Your ball changes. It evolves all the time. So you're constantly learning new defenses, new offenses, the way you attack things. You'll watch the film for those things, but what we do know is the personality traits. You don't change as a person that often about how you go about your business. And the thing you know about him, he's going to be meticulous. He's going to be detail-oriented. He's going to be driven. He's going to have a plan for everything. And that's, I'm very wired, very similar in that same way and how we used to go at it and the practices we used to have and the things we used to do. So, from that standpoint, but, we'll have to watch the film because they got, and he'll adapt. The thing that, I learned that I did each year at LSU and he did, you adapt to what we do, but we have to change with the players. What can the players do? And so that's going to be the matchup, and that's what makes it fun.
Well, I'm a pro guy, Coach. Now, I don't get to talk about college ball much. I want to talk about Jameis Winston, though. Obviously, he was amazing at Florida State. He's been a stud coming into the NFL, and now he has some weapons around him in Tampa. What do you see him becoming? Where do you see him fitting in the tiers or when you rank quarterbacks? Is he a guy you feel can be the top tier, the Tom Brady's, the Andrew Lucks, the Ben Roethlisbergers?
I really do. And everybody says you're prejudiced because you coached him. You know what I'm saying? I've been around him. I know. When you're a freshman and you walk off the field, how we were in there watching film as coaches, and all of a sudden, 9:30, 10 o'clock, we're still in the meeting, he knocks on the door. Coach, I did these 6 things wrong. Did you see anything else? Tomorrow on third down, I like this. In the red zone, I like this. Because he is a student of the game. And his demeanor and his personality is so infectious that you can't be around him and not play hard, practice hard, and want to do it. And then his drive and expectations for himself. I do. I know the physical talent, but I know the mental and psychological disposition of him. You don't want to jinx a guy. I think the guy will be a Hall of Fame guy and be one of the great guys. I really do.
It's awesome.
Jimbo Fisher, who has said that he makes life hell for his players. This has been anything but. Coach, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to that first game of the season.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck in all along the way, of course.
Welcome inside College Football Live. Maria Taylor, David Pollack, and the coach, Jimbo Fisher from Florida State. And, Coach, before we even dive into the schedule, I'm trying to figure out what kind of vacations you've taken over the summer to kind of like calm your nerves, get you ready for the season. How do you do that?
First thing to do, take the family back. I'm from West Virginia in the hills. We love going back and just be out in the country with my mom and my family and, relax on the farm. We have a farm with cat, but ride horses, ride four-wheelers. And just fish a little bit. And just relax and be out in the country, not having to shoot a gun. There ain't nobody worrying about it. Whatever goes on, having fun. And then I actually took family and friends and everybody to, we went down to the Bahamas about 5 days. I took my mom and my niece, nieces and nephews and all that, and been about 5 days down there, so it was good and relaxing that way.
What is about, I guess, Saban, West Virginia, just great coaches just come out of West
Virginia.
That's where y'all
go.
We're about 12, 14 miles apart.
Yeah, how about that?
Hey, well, I'm glad you had like a really good break. You went to the Bahamas because
as
soon as your season starts, September 2nd, you're taking on Alabama. It's like the best game ever on the slate. It could be 1 versus 2. Just talk about the expectation that you have going into the first game, and there's still a lot of unknowns when you get to the field, but you're taking on a great
Well, you're going to find them out. You're going to find them out quick. Good and bad. You know what I mean? You're going to find some guys step up and handle the moment. But the good thing is you're getting in that atmosphere and environment like a playoff environment. And there's not many chances you could put your team in that, preparing for that situation, at the end of the season. So I think it's a great opportunity. There's a lot. See, this thing has got great reward. It's got high risk. This is what it's about. But at the same time, I think we'll find out the strengths and weaknesses of our team and be able to adjust very quickly from them, because you're going against Nick. They're going to be prepared. They're ready to play. Hopefully we'll be the same thing. We feel that way when we come out, so we'll find out.
I know one thing. As a player, I focused a lot more in off-season workouts than I did when I opened up with Georgia Southern or something like that. Focus of your team.
The urgency.
They're going to be like, yeah, I might need this week. I might need to make sure that. And another thing I know, too, is last year, DeAndre Francois, to me, showed that he was probably one of the toughest cats in college football. He's going to get hit in that game, and there's going to be a lot of super freaks. So that him preparing offensive line, thinking about Nick, a lot of time, what is
No,
goes through your head.
There
with all
is.
that
We got
stuff?
4 of the 5 back, and I feel we're get Dickerson back, Leonard up, and get Eberle healed up from the surgery. He had major surgery on his hips, and he had some bone. He couldn't even get down last year halfway through the season. And getting that back will be a much greater. I think we feel Minshew in that group. We got one guy to replace. But at the same time, we get it every day in practice. I mean, sometimes if they don't do it right, we'll make them go live. I mean, and our guys up front from Sweat and Derwin and Jacob Pugh and Noddy, those guys are Burns and Matthew. I mean, it is what he's going against every day. But they're going to play. It's going to be a competitive, physical, tough. I mean, it's going to be what. It's going to be like a playoff game. I mean, it is.
Well, it might be a playoff game in the end.
Right, exactly.
It might be.
It could be. It could be. But to think about it is, I keep telling everybody though, that's one game. 2 weeks later, we're playing Miami, who has a great group coming back. You're going into NC State. There's a tremendous offense and defensive lines, a quarterback. I mean, they're. You remember they're a missed field goal and a dropped interception beating us and Clemson last year. That's a great team. We still have Louisville. We still have Clemson. We got to finish up at Florida. See, people forget our non-conference now. Florida's a non-conference. Then when you add Alabama, we got 2 major non-conference games. So, it's still a one-game deal. But it's exciting, the competitiveness, and you're going to find out where you're at, and we'll be ready to play.
Well, one of the huge storylines is just the idea of you and Nick Saban finally playing against each other. You've been on the same staff. You've won national titles. Apart from each other, you've won national titles. And now you're facing off against each other. I'm just curious, maybe the thought or what you'll be thinking when you're seeing that guy stalking the other sideline and you're going up against him.
I know he's going to do everything to beat me, so I better do everything to beat him. That's the way we were in practice every day. I mean, the offense and defense, but in a great way. I mean, we created it. We didn't never do outs, but the competitiveness and tenacity. And he made me a better coach on offense, and hopefully I made him a better coach on defense from things we did to them in practice. And, I know Marcus Spears and those guys joke. I was talking with Ryan Clark today. We were laughing about it, too. See, Ryan was on that team. The first 2 years we were there, and we won the SEC in 2001. He was a free safety on that team. And
unfortunately, I was on the other side of that.
You've heard his feelings.
I forgot about that in 2001. Y'all got us back, though, the next.
Dang, Skipper. We beat the mess out of y'all when y'all came
2001, 2000. No, that was 3. I'm talking about 1, though. 2003 you're talking about. I was talking about 2001 when we played that great Tennessee team that they had Haynesworth and Henderson and Overstreet and that whole crew. We upset them in the SEC championship. But, the competitiveness in that way is they're going to be prepared. And you as a competitor, you want to match yourself against guys that are considered the best and where you go in.
Well, I mean, thinking about that, like, what did you take away from or knowing you're going against him? Does that make you think I got to change what I do a little bit? Or can you never do that? You just got to be who you are and
I mean, I am who I am, and I think we were made in the same mold, and we're very detail-oriented, very technical, and we know how to attack people. I think you find your ways to attack their defense. They find their ways to attack your offense and how you scheme. But you are who you are and what you do, and then you're going to put your wrinkles and you add your things in. But at the same time, we're the 2 winningest teams in college football in the last 7 years. It's Alabama and Florida State, and so I think what we've done has been pretty good too. So, we're going to do what we do, and we think we got good players too. So.
2 winningest coaches, too. I mean, that's going to be the fun part about it. Do you have any good stories for us about Saban, that you guys have shared on the same sideline? We can't let you leave the college football lounge.
It's going to be PG-rated stories, Coach.
I mean, there's a bunch of them now. I mean, practices were intense. I mean, but the thing, I can remember winning 34-0 and getting chewed out. I can remember getting beaten, being, hey, this
Lane
is what we got to do.
Kiffin doesn't know what that's like at all.
But here's the thing you always understood. Nick, but at the same time, I always thought we had a tremendous relationship. We got along. We never had issues. If you did your job and worked your tail off and did what you're supposed to do and be a team, I mean, Nick didn't have a problem with you. I mean, do your job. I mean, I loved it because I'd been on staffs and been around people, too, where guys weren't carrying their weight. And coaches were scared to say it. Just like if it was a player, you jump on him. Well, coaches, they wouldn't. And when Nick just addressed this and do your job. And I know me as a coach, I love that because I'm going to do my job as an assistant coach. I'm going to do everything we can do to win a national championship. I appreciate it. I loved working for him. I really did. I mean, even our noontime basketball. We were always on the same team. We won the championship.
Too hyper-competitive?
We won the championship every year. We always won.
Coach never loses,
I've heard
right?
a little bit about coaches' games, and it sounds like it's a stacked deck nowadays. Back then, was it a stacked deck too, or was
we got on the same team? We never lost. I'll say that.
All right.
Just tell us real quick, DeAndre Francois, and what is the next phase or the next big step for him year 2 as your starter?
I think first of all, and you know this from a defensive player. All right, who's the guy getting the ball every play? Do I respect him as a teammate? Do I respect him as a competitor? Do I know if he touches the ball, we have a chance to? I think he proved that. I mean, from the toughness, the shots he took, the competitive ways he got up. And think about this. The Ole Miss game, how he flipped the script and comes back in that game. Even though we lost North Carolina, he took us on a 90-yard drive and scored with 34 seconds to win the game. Miami, he gets off the deck, shoulder injury, comes back in, 2 touchdowns second half. We beat Miami down there on had to block a field, but brought us back to victory. NC State takes us on a game-winning drive. Michigan makes the throw. And you always wonder, you know, even great players, but can he do it if it was that play? You know what I'm saying? We were number 1 in the country in red zone offense. He never had a turnover. We were a great third down team. You know, those key moments, 3rd and long, he threw touchdown. And you think, but in that moment, if I get him the ball, can he really make those plays? He's proven that. Now, again, you got to prove it every day.
No.
But what our team did was gain such great respect for him as a competitor. And you know this on defense. Hey, let's go bust our butt and get that guy the ball, because I know if we get it to him, he's going to win the game for us. You know, he can go make a play to win it. And offensively, I'm going to block extra hard. I'm going to do better. But what I think he's really grown at, that he's got to respect now, he understands when I've gotten on a guy or a coach has gotten on a guy to walk over and pat him on the butt and say, hey, this is what happens. Or to go chew him out and say, listen, you're not giving enough respect to the coach. You got to do this. Or to wait after practice and say, you know something, these routes aren't right. We got to get 10 minutes of this after practice. And you see it in the summer. And I see that part of him growing that no one, those are the parts that no one sees. It, to me, is really quarterbacking. You know what I mean? Because those guys on the field got to be willing to lay their heart and soul, offense and defense and special teams, because he gets the ball every play. And I think that's where I'm seeing him grow the most. And I'm proud and I'm hoping it, you know, I think I see it in our team, you know what I'm saying, in their eyes.
But it wouldn't happen if he didn't prove himself.
No, you got to go out there.
You have to prove it,
and you have to, because let me tell you something. That respect on the, and when you get between them white lines, it's earned.
Yeah, it's earned.
You have to earn it.
No.
All right,
And he's done that.
He'll be earning it September 2nd. I mean, thank you
No
for
doubt.
college football, on behalf of college football, for scheduling
that
tough,
game. You ain't lying.
scheduling that game, and getting us off on the right
It's
foot,
going to
Coach.
be, I am too. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, Jimbo Fisher, he has no problem scheduling tough and dealing with a difficult schedule in the Big Ten. They're the same way in media days.